Three. All right. Yazin, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks,
I'm,
Bill. Thanks for having
I
me.
I think I'm glad to have you here. I'll be honest with you. I haven't really studied your project that much. It was recommended to me by Charles, I believe, our French friend, Charles, uh, who has the sultry French voice on Clubhouse. I was on there one day and, we can do this back channel stuff. So he was like, "Hey, you need to look at this project," because I think I might have said, "Hey, I need to start rounding up some guests for the podcast," and he hit me right away and said, "Hey, you should take a look at this." So, and then I think I've heard you once or twice in some rooms that we've inhabited simultaneously, and I was impressed. But you go by just Yaz in Clubhouse, right?
Yeah, I was early enough in Clubhouse to get that handle. I wasn't early enough in Bitclout to get just
Yeah.
YAZ. I offered to pay someone, but the guy that owns it now, and he wouldn't accept anything less than $10,000. So,
Wow. Wow,
so I
man.
got to stick
Maybe
with Yazin.
maybe he's hoping the band Yaz will come along and want to buy it from him or something.
Yeah,
You know that band?
never heard of him.
Oh my gosh. Well, that clearly shows our differences in age, quite possibly, because back in the mid 80s, there was this really great sort of pop, European type pop band with an amazing singer, but they were very electronic y, which was very, cutting edge back then. And they
Yeah.
were called Yaz, and they had some really popular songs. So you should look it up. You might have heard the
Oh,
songs and thought they were more contemporary than they are.
maybe. I mean, I'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
I think the other weird association with Yaz is there's like that weird birth control. It was like a thing because it was causing
Oh my,
blood
yeah, I think I
clots and
remember
like
that.
heart problems.
Yeah.
And so that was always the first thing that came up for like a 5-year time frame in like the early 2010s.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
cool. All right, so where are you at and where are you from?
So I'm in Chicago now, and I'm from Chicago, born and raised.
Right on, man. I've spent some time there. If you can't find something to eat in that town, then you're blind or something. It's some
Yeah,
of
I
the most
mean,
the food is amazing
well, you know why, right?
because of the stockyards, maybe.
I'm sure that has something to do with it. But from my point of view, in the winter, especially when it gets really cold, there's
Hmm.
really nothing else to do.
Yes,
You eat and drink in Chicago
yep. I
in
was
the
going to add
winter.
drinking to that because
Yeah.
that's probably one of the worst times of my life as far as alcohol consumption. But fortunately, that was in my early 20s. But boy, it got
Yeah.
cold. And when I talk about food there, man, it's like what I love about Chicago is I guess you could equate it to like Philly. You can go anywhere and get a Philly cheesesteak. But in Chicago, it's the hot dog, it's the combo sandwich, it's the Italian sausage, and they seem to be like the same everywhere. And there's a certain quality level that it has to attain or it's not legit. And so anywhere you go and you get that, you kind of know what you're getting and it's usually pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about that is like the old Chicago, like the deep dish pizza, the hot
Yep.
dog, Wrigley Field, the Cubs game. But I think the Chicago that I experience is not unlike any other like large city in the US or really like around the world where they're all just kind of merging and kind of feeling the same. And they're broken out into neighborhoods where there's like the cool industrial neighborhood, there's like the family neighborhood, there's like the downtown neighborhood.
Yeah.
Did I lose you?
No, I was just putting you primarily on the screen here.
Oh, nice. Thank you. And so like that old classic um, perception of Chicago, I don't really experience it that much. And maybe it's because there's like the city center where there's the Bean and the Ferris wheel and Navy Pier, and it's
Right.
like a little more touristy, and a lot of that old uh, like Chicago experience, those experiences are kind of pushed, but
Hmm.
everywhere else, it feels like there's parts of Chicago where it doesn't feel like Chicago, and that's like where I spend most of my time. There's like
Like where?
on the west side specifically,
Okay.
where like there's like and it's the same thing that happens in every city. Like the old industrial neighborhoods are now turning into
Yeah.
like these restaurant districts with like cool lofts that like all, the tech.
I lost your audio there for a second.
Oh no.
Nope, there you go. All right, so say that again about what you have there in the new districts.
Yeah, like the restaurants, the startups, the tech companies,
Right,
it's like the millennial Gen
right,
Z experience. That it's mirroring a lot of different cities that I've seen both in like
yeah,
Asia, Europe, like New York, Miami, LA, and all
yeah,
these big cities are they're just kind of like they're becoming more and more similar.
yeah, yeah. Hey, Chicago to me was one of the coldest places I've ever lived, but
That's brutal, man.
I really had a good time for the 2 years I was there. I was, young and but I just couldn't bear the weather, so I went to Denver where it was the sunshine.
Nice.
So
And you're
cool.
you're in Atlanta now?
I'm in the Atlanta area, born and
Yeah. And
raised. Left a long
okay.
time ago and came back and kind of settled in.
Yeah, I can hear like a little bit of a southern accent.
Yeah, I can lose it if I want to. Um,
Let's hear it.
well, no, I mean, I'm not trying to say I'm going to perform for you, but in
Oh,
general,
okay.
I can kind of. I went through a lot of years living in other parts of the world where I sort of masked it, and people would ask me where I was from, and I would tell them, and they're like, "There's no way, I can't tell." Now, but when you come back, like I literally, when we lived in Denver, I could call home and speak to someone in the family. My wife would say by the end of the call, she's like, "You're just completely Southern again." So you just absorb it. So, you take it right back on. And so when I moved here, you relax with it. And so now my wife, who was never born and raised here, has a Southern accent, but she won't admit to it.
I love that.
So, yeah. So, yeah, it is, but I can get really lazy and my drawl comes out. But, when I'm among friends, nobody notices.
I mean, I'm
So,
jealous. I wish I could pull off a southern accent.
yeah, well, if you're not legit, people down here know. When people
Yeah.
fake it, it's like, all right, you're just making fun of me now.
Yeah, one of my clients right now is a company based in Atlanta, and there's a lot of people in Atlanta, a few people from Nashville, and every so often I'll try to like, get away with it. Like I can try,
Yeah, just don't
but
even
it
bother.
does it doesn't. Or I get
Yeah,
made fun of all the time.
yeah, it's like me trying to fake a Chicago one. But one of my best friends is born and raised. Oh man, I can't remember that part of town he was in, but he would say, "Hey," we started talking about how do you say certain things in Chicago. He's like, I don't, he's like, "Tell me what this means." And he said, "Grotchki." And I said, "Well, it means garage key." And he said, "You're right." But I think a lot of people wouldn't know that. But that's the way he and his friends would say garage key. They say grotchki.
I've never heard that, and
Yeah.
sometimes I also have trouble just like detecting what the Chicago accent is to begin with. Like if I meet someone from like Minnesota or Wisconsin, it's clear that Midwestern accent like comes through really
Oh yeah,
strong.
yeah.
And
I
then there's like,
sometimes think Chicago, I think, has different dialects in different parts of the city. At least it did when I was there.
yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like I grew up on the South Side, and there's like a big Irish community on the South Side, and that's like where like the the old '85 Bears accent is from, like the Bears.
Right.
You know what
Oh
I'm
yeah.
talking
The
about?
Bears. The Bears.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who would win? What they would say? Who would win in a football game with Ditka or God? Making fun. Mike Ditka was and I was in Chicago when Ditka got fired, and you would have thought that there was a nuclear bomb that went off or something. It was like the town was in an uproar. That shows how long ago I lived there. But um, so yeah, we could go on and on about Chicago. So let's talk a bit about what you've been doing. How did you get into this Bitclout thing? Well, what were you doing before you got into Bitclout?
What I'm still doing now, so I run a UX company. Um, and do you work in tech, or are you familiar with like tech lingo at all?
Only as usually in two ways. One is as a hobby, I follow it a lot, but then most of the things I get involved with are martech, marketing tech, because I own an ad agency, and so
Okay.
we have to deal with UI UX a lot.
Yeah, so you know what UI UX is, you've heard of
Oh
it.
yeah,
sometimes like that's a very foreign word to some people. So I have to figure out like where my starting point is. But in the simplest form, it's designing apps that are
Mhm.
both useful and usable.
Right.
And so I built a consultancy around that, and um, that's what I've been doing for almost a decade. And so I think what's interesting about Bitclout is it's forcing everyone to express what they're good at in their own way.
Mhm.
And the most obvious thing is like NFT artists right now, it's very easy to be noticed or to express your value as an NFT artist, because it's really well designed for that. But there are a lot of like different use cases where people are expressing their talents, their value in different ways. And like for instance, Dr. Kat Cohen on the platform, she's like, she's not a coder, she's not an artist, but she threw an awesome BitClout event.
Yeah.
And like that was her contribution to the community, that was her contribution to the platform. And when I first joined, there was a dilemma that I was experiencing, which is like, I can try to be witty with text in like this Twitter use case. I can try to use the graphic design skills that I have to make, compelling visuals. But ultimately, like, my lane is building great products. And
Mhm.
so I was like, I have to build a good user experience, one that helps contribute to the community. And that's where I've put my effort and energy in the realm of BitCloud.
Right. Right. Well, I did go
And
to your
even
website.
sorry, just one last thing. And like
Sure.
even for you, right? Like creating a podcast and being consistent with it and creating great conversations and like also an incredible contribution to the BitClout community. Like that's
Yeah.
just yet
Yeah.
another example.
Well, you just look at what you can do, and I can't do what you do there. And
I can't do what you do.
yeah, as timing well, and as timing went by, and I have another podcast with a partner that's more crypto related, and I was like, I'd like to do my own. And coincidentally, BitClout emerged, and I was like, I wonder if there's a BitClout podcast. So I, checked right in. Nope, maybe it's maybe I'll
Brilliant.
do a podcast about this. So it was what's the word I'm looking for? I can't even think of it, but it was just perfect timing, and it was serendipitous. That's the word. So, it,
And I've heard a couple of your recent episodes too, and like you're really good at breaking down formalities, making everyone feel relaxed, making the conversation feel authentic.
yeah,
Like
well,
you
I
do a really good
that's
job of that.
well, thank you, and we try, but and we, boy, when we came out of the gate, we did like 20 episodes in the first month, and now it's been like a month since I've done one. But summertime and kids at home and all of that,
Mm,
and for the past 2 weeks, literally, I've been trying to do. I've had two people. I didn't want to try to overbook. And so I had a couple of people lined up that were like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. And then every day it would change like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I'm sorry. And it was sometimes my fault, sometimes their fault. Then I would travel, then they would travel. So I had like these two people, two different guests, and I never could get them on. And then I would leave town for a week and come back and go, well, now what? So now I'm kind of decided, well, I just need to start asking more people, like I used to. And so you're the first one back in the gate. So I'm glad we're able to do this. So, and I want to tell my listeners, check out ms2 mstq.io. I'm going to show it here on the screen, mstq.io. And that's Yazin's main
agency.
website, agency site.
Hmm.
And I just got to tell you, I love it. I took a look at it yesterday and immediately grabbed the link and sent it to one of my devs and said, you got to look at this. Like, this is a reference we need to look at in the future for some other things we may do. So,
Well, I made that website at a moment in time where I felt like I had been so overly invested in client work and I hadn't really spent much time making stuff for myself. So it was like full pent up creative energy that I just wanted to express, like
yeah,
for just just for creativity's sake. Because
yeah,
usually in the realm of UX, it's always pointed at something. It's pointed
right.
at a business problem. It's pointed at a person, like a person's pain point. And so making that website was I was just
Fun.
at a moment where I just wanted to make it as fun as
Yeah.
possible.
Well, and I could tell that, and I was like, "Man, this is a person who gets clearly knows what they're doing,
Oh, thanks,
and
man.
probably innately, like I would probably spend a lot of time trying to pull that out of my brain to say, this is what I want, and you kind of knew how to do it. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm going to use this as an example. So hopefully we don't rip you off too much. But I was just like, this is a great thing to try and endeavor to be as good as that. So that's cool.
Yeah,
So
feel
that's
free.
that.
I mean, imitation is the greatest form of flattery.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I'm going to look at that in the future for some other things we do for other people and for ourselves. Maybe for the podcast site. I don't know, but that's the extent of what I've been able to experience with what you've been doing. And I do know that you've created Chime In, and I know that it's a metaverse of sorts. And now you got to go through this with me and all the others out there that don't really understand metaverses yet fully. Like, what's this all about? Like, people talk about the metaverse. Well, it seems to me there's probably a lot of metaverses, but is this like you remember Second Life? Or is it kind of like MySpace? Like, what do we talk about when everybody tosses around this word metaverse?
Okay, let me just full disclosure. The concept of a metaverse is still something I'm trying to understand, is still something I'm exploring,
Hmm.
because the inception of this idea was not rooted in a metaverse or in because the metaverse is a trending topic right now for a bunch of different reasons. Uh, there are things like Decentraland, Sandbox, crypto voxels. Mark Zuckerberg just like a few weeks ago said that pretty much the future of Facebook is going to hinge on this vision for a metaverse that they're building using the Oculus technology that they've built. But it's trending because people are buying a lot of digital property right now, and we're talking like in the tens of millions of dollars that have been spent on just buying digital property, and it mirrors like real life where people are spending more for this plot of land next to like a digital. It's like a video game. Like a metaverse is
Right.
meant to be like a video game with an avatar, and you can move to this virtual space and interact with others. And people are buying plots of land next to the water or close to where you enter, and there's prime real estate. And it's I think starting to enter the collective consciousness of where the internet is heading. So blockchain is like Web 3.0. The next thing in everyone's purview is this notion of the metaverse as the way that we'll spend most of our time on the internet. And that's a paradigm shift even for me that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. But in the context of Bitclout, the inception of Chime In was I started it for a different reason than like, oh, okay, so there can be like a digital world that everyone interacts in. I just wanted to create initially a place that consolidated all of the disparate Zoom calls, the Discord channels, the Telegram groups. What else is there? Clubhouse rooms.
Hmm.
Most of the activity in the first like few months of BitClout was, there's a lot happening in the feed, but most of the real meaningful connections were happening off the platform. And I was like, there needs to be a place where people can convene, meet each other, interact, that has integrated BitClout functionality, so that because I know one of the initial value propositions of BitClout, or at least the early culture of it, was using pseudonymous profiles. So
Hmm.
like Doodles is a great example, like using a puppy as the profile image and naming the account after his dog. And there's a lot of really popular profiles that don't expose real identities. And I think that's a good thing, and I think that's where the internet's moving. And so when you go on Clubhouse or when you go on Zoom, there's either a video component, or you have to use a real identity, or you have to link your social media platforms, and you kind of lose that veil
Yeah.
that you create when you enter the BitClout community. So that was like the inception of the idea. And I also just, you know, again, like using this as another opportunity to have fun building a digital product that was a full expression of creativity as opposed to just purely solving a pain point. And so if I were to think about like, what's the most interesting way where we can communicate organically, and audio was the choice that I made. But instead of like a Clubhouse like feed where you're scrolling through a vertical feed of rooms that just
Mhm.
they're like blocks of, you know, title and who's inside the room. I wanted to experiment more with a spatial interface. So it was the idea of like a virtual city kind of spawned from there. And then the it was so positively received in the context of like this metaverse conversation that that was kind of the path that I ended up moving towards once I saw how people were reacting to it.
And had you ever considered building a metaverse or had any experience before?
No, no, not
So
at
did
all.
you have to just say, "Okay, I'm gonna roll up my sleeves and do a lot of research and deep dives to try and figure out how to start," or did you build a team to help you build it? What's the current state of it?
Okay, so current state and team, let's talk about that in a second. But um, doing all the research is, I mean, I've been doing that over the last like week or so, just
Mm,
understanding the realm of metaverses. And you know, it's still so new that everyone's definition of a metaverse is different. Okay, and the way I approached it, the way I came into the project, my mentality was uninfluenced by other projects or other ideas or other definitions of it. And I think that's what's been most fun is like, I think that in the context of a virtual gathering place, um, you know, whether it's VR or whether it's an interface on a flat, you know, two-dimensional screen, that in my opinion, the best version of a metaverse that we have today is something that feels and looks like Clubhouse. So I think we'll eventually go through and actually chime in here in a second. But
yeah.
the most common feedback that I've gotten upon first impressions are people are going in and entering, imagining that they're going to have an avatar and they're moving through a space. I think that's a really lame way to use, you know, a device or a screen or an app, because it's neglecting all the awesome efficiencies that we've created through this like point and click interface.
Mhm.
Because if I have to interact with people using like an avatar and I have to navigate with my keyboard arrows or with my mouse, it's incredibly disorienting. I don't know if you've ever done it from a computer before.
Yeah, I have.
And
I did it with, and I actually have experience in 3D animation, you know,
okay,
in the early days of I was doing a lot of it actually, and then I jumped into Second Life. Do you remember that? Do you remember Second Life at all?
yeah, you mentioned that earlier. I still have to look into it, but a few people have
It's
mentioned it to me
it's pretty
too.
amazing. It was, I think, way ahead of its time, but it was a 3D world where you had your own space and you could build in 3D, so you could build like a little house or whatever. It
Yeah,
helped to have some spatial, you know, abilities with like it was natural for me because of my 3D background, but you would have a little sandbox you could play and learn how to build 3D
yeah,
objects, and people would build pretty elaborate places, but it was a whole world, kind of like we have Minecraft now, which is more, um, you know, much less smooth, but it's still huge worlds that people can navigate.
yeah. Well,
Second,
navigation is like the most important thing
sure,
in any like metaverse by any standard or definition, right? And I think if it's through a character, like in a first person view, it's there's two reasons why I don't like that. Number one, it's dizzying and nauseating if you're just trying to get used to it. And number two, there's a learning curve to how to navigate that is way higher than any other app or interface that we use on a day-to-day basis.
sure,
And like ultimately the most important thing is that we're creating social interactions. And so if the barrier between a meaningful social interaction is like hours of figuring out where to look, how to look, and how to move through space, I think that's really problematic. And so for that reason, I think like the best version of a metaverse that exists today is drop in audio and point and click for
yeah.
navigation. And so that was the foundation for the way that I wanted to set up the
Right.
digital interaction design, and also just the paradigm in which people were interacting and moving in and out of like these digital spaces.
Right. Well, my thing with Second Life was you had a full body avatar and you could mod it however you wanted. And then you could talk to other people. I don't recall, I don't believe when I was doing it, which was very short lived, that you could have voice chat, but it was like just a text chat, like over your head was what you were saying, a bubble. And that's what freaked me out. That was the part about it that I said, I can't do this. Like some strange person, their avatar would come walking up to me in whatever space my avatar was inhabiting and start talking to me. And I was like, you're freaking me out. Like, I don't want to do this. And then the second part of that was you don't have self-awareness when you're in that world. Like you can't see what you look like. Like we, at least in our own physical bodies, kind of have a sense of are my clothes fitting right or whatever? How am I standing? What's my posture? This would be just like it was like a dead puppet, like a puppet that's not being animated when a person's not animating it. And you're trying to interact with it. And it was so unnatural. And I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. So I think you're right. I think having a less simple sort of interface, because I find that even with audio, drop in audio, I get a sense of a person, and communities get built rather quickly and easily, more easily than I thought was possible.
Yeah, there's something to be said about the customization and the expression of personal identity that comes with avatars. That's really great. That I don't think I'm there yet. I'm experimenting with different ideas of having accounts or individuals create and design their own buildings in this virtual city. And that seems to be positively received as a way of self-expression, as a way of uniquely identifying someone in the context of this virtual space.
Well, and
Um,
wearables as NFTs are a big deal.
yeah, in the physical world or in the digital world.
Well, I mean, it's transitioning to the digital world where you have now designers that are designing clothing that's just as wearable in an in-game experience, and
Yeah,
it's high fashion, and
maybe
they become
maybe we should.
NFTs.
Yeah, like I think I read or heard this a while ago, but people are spending more money on virtual purses for like Fortnite skins than they are
Right.
like their real life purses and accessories and stuff.
It's nuts.
So there's something there, but maybe it might be worth spending some time going through Chime In right now, because
Let's do it, man. Yeah,
you'll
because I need to understand this.
yeah, you'll see there's no avatar component.
Right. So I'm going to try to navigate this thing, and I'm going to share my screen for that one.
Yeah,
Um,
perfect.
Here we go. For the benefit of our YouTube thing, and this is for anyone listening on the podcast, then you'll be able to kind of go reference that if you want to see it. But and I'm technically directing this, so I'm got to learn where everything is. All right, so here we go. And I'm going to use my fake account that I created for another show we did with Clout Megazord. And I wasn't going to, but as it turns out, when I get to it's chime-in.io. And it just, I think when I went to the get started or however this worked, no, it went directly to this page in Chrome. When I started in Brave, I usually use the Brave browser. I think I didn't have Java enabled, and so it didn't give me this app. Is that right? Is that why I would not have seen what is now, instead of like right now we're looking at this front page, which is chime in, welcome, login with Bitclout. That's the first thing that showed up on the Chrome browser.
Yeah, I think it might be because I haven't optimized it for Brave yet. I've just been
Yeah.
testing it on Chrome
Okay.
and Firefox and Safari. But
All right.
but yeah, what we're looking right now is, just to describe it in a little bit more detail, is just a login screen, and it's a single button that says login to BitClout. So it's
Yeah.
super
And I'm
simple.
going to do that. And it takes me to identity.bitclout.com, which anyone who's involved with BitClout should know what that is by now. But I've I confessed to you before the show, I'm not prone to put my normal seed phrases in anything, and I promote that idea incessantly on this show because of my crypto experience. That's kind of sort of a common rule: is you don't give your private keys to anyone. And
Yeah, and
we're having to transcend that in Bitclout world. If we're going to have nodes, it's just inevitable. We have to overcome that fear and interface with identity.bitclout.com in various nodes, correct?
yeah, so let me just say a couple things about what we're looking at here. So this is the identity API that we're using to log you into Chime In. And the first thing I want to point out is that it's using the lowest level access. And I too, like you, am very skeptical or hesitant to put in my seed phrase in third-party apps. So I completely empathize with the caution for security here. And for that reason, like that was a very intentional choice not to build my own node and only to use the BitClout API, at least for the current stage that this product is in right now. Because all I need to pull is your profile picture, your bio, your coin price, and your followers. And then I'm pulling links for the page where someone can buy your coin, and I'm pulling a link to navigate directly to your BitClout profile on bitclout.com. So that's the only information that you're granting access to. And there's no permission to post. There's no permission for transactions. You know, we're not signing anything. You're not creating any. You're not exchanging any information outside of just your basic profile information.
Okay, and that's what people call level 1.
Yep.
Yeah, and so when I'm looking at this page, it says my basic information, and that's checked as if that's all you're asking for. And then you have these other ones that are post message, like follow on my behalf. That's what people refer to as level 2, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's level 3, which is buy, sell, and send coins on my behalf, which is the one people are like, we never do that. Don't, so that's the part. So if I'm hearing you right, it's like, don't worry about this. This is just grabbing some info. It's letting us just get some basics about your profile so we can show you.
And we can show other people.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, dream state, like in the short term, I would love to just be able to, like, you'll see how it works here in a second, but I would love to just give people the ability to fling diamonds back and forth, but I can't do that unless I get more security access here, which I don't want to do. Like I don't want to enter that territory. I don't want to, I don't want people to feel uncomfortable, and I don't want that. I think that complicates the experience. Yeah.
All right. So I can just click on this demo account I have, right? And that's going to log me in.
Yeah.
There we go.
Voila.
Right on. All right. So here we are on this. So who's in town? Here's my account.
You're using a big monitor, aren't you?
I am. And I can make this bigger. Yeah, that's my video editing monitor.
That's good.
There we go.
Okay, so you're a Megazord demo account.
Right.
And you know what? I'm not even going to say anything. I want you to, move your mouse around, click on things, and you tell me what you think you're looking at.
Okay, so I'm looking at a 3D world, and these, as I hover over them, each of these 3D buildings, I'm sort of looking at a perspective view of buildings from the sky. Okay, so here we go. You've right on. I'm getting it now. I'm looking at what it's written when it pops up. These represent rooms. These little buildings. Or Bits Today has their own sort of globe, like USA Today, basically a globe type sphere that's Bits Today. It says this room is empty. Chime In Pub. That sounds like a great place to go late in the afternoon, maybe.
Right.
The reason I say that is there's some people at BitClout that there's rooms I avoid for reasons I won't disclose.
Like the Shilling Room.
Well, yes, but there are some other rooms where I see a few people and I'm like, I know if I go in this room, there's not going to be many people. There's probably going to be 6 of us. And it's like meeting friends at a pub in the afternoon. Like we are relaxed. We're usually just, talk. We don't even talk stuff about Bitclout, even though we're all related through Bitclout. We'll talk about other things. That to me is like going to the pub and I know I can relax and, we can joke around and all that sort of stuff. The shilling room.
I tried changing the name of the Chime In pub the other day,
Hmm.
and a few people were really upset because they're like, I don't feel as relaxed anymore. So I've
What,
gotten that
what,
feedback before.
so what did you change it to?
It was a group that runs consistent rooms on Clubhouse, and I was giving them a walkthrough about how I can, modify the titles of each room and the names and like the design and styles of the building. And so just to demonstrate, I briefly renamed it to their Clubhouse group, and
Hmm.
it was their Clubhouse group. They're like, no, change it back. We like Chime In Pub.
That's cool. So
Yeah.
the town hall is obviously your centerpiece of the place. I was thinking of something more along the Parthenon or something where, the forum, where the real philosophers come in to sit on the, you know, sit on the front steps and philosophize about Bitclout. But anyway, this is cool looking. That's a pretty imposing structure. And to what degree does the size of the structure uh, infer influence?
There's nothing intentional right now, so that's for you to infer.
So yeah, I mean, because obviously I look at town hall. You want your town hall to be in the center of town. You want it to be an imposing structure. So that makes
Yeah,
sense.
well,
But like
I'll share a
Crafts,
little bit more context here. Yeah,
sure.
like so the surrounding buildings, I like. So right now we have the Krasenstein building. It's in the shape of a K,
Hmm.
and they ran like an opening ceremony room. We had like 30 people in there the other day. It was a lot of fun. Today we just launched the Bits Today room. It's this globe structure, and
Hmm.
you can see all these buildings are unique to the account, but still maintaining the same like aesthetic material, and it all just kind of fits in and blends in this like clay, material or facade that I'm using. The other two rooms, the green one and the purple one, so the Shilling Room and the Chime In Pub, are currently available as NFTs. And if you are awarded the NFT, then I go through the same process that I did with Bits Today and Krasenstein, and I make you a custom room and you can use it as you wish. And so the surrounding buildings from like so town hall's right in the center, and you can see up top
Hmm.
it's got like the Bitclout logo, and that's meant to be the anchor for the any activity that happens in here,
Hmm.
and the representative buildings surrounding it. I'm currently experimenting because a lot of this is still very experimental, right? On how I'm running this and how I'm making everyone's experience as good as it can possibly be. But
Hmm.
you using the surrounding buildings that are smaller in scale, as you can tell, to customize them based on who the owner is at the time.
Hmm. Do they sort of sit and talk about how they want it to look, or you just sort of say, this is what I think would be cool?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I wanted the BitClout podcast studio, we could put together a cool space and then I could invite people to a recording of the BitClout podcast or.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have you do have a logo, but
Mhm.
we can call it whatever you want. It could be in the shape of a letter. We can put your face on the building. We can put a microphone as the shape of the building. There's a lot of really cool stuff that we can do. But the one thing to note is that like it's not. I'm not programming these shapes. I'm actually creating them by hand in
Mhm.
a design tool. So we can really do anything. And my role in that process is to obviously bring the idea to life, but also just make sure that the aesthetic fits in with the rest of the buildings and rooms here.
Okay, so I did click on the bits today while you were talking, and it. I'll do it again. It says right now the room is empty, but if it in a parallel sense with like Clubhouse, this represents like a Clubhouse room that I'm clicking on to go to.
Yeah, here, I'll tell you what. So your microphone right on top of your profile, click that because you're using your microphone for this conversation right now.
Okay, so
But once you click
mute.
that
Okay, I
microphone,
had
it
to mute
mutes.
that. Okay,
Yep.
so did you lose me then?
Well, I'm not in the room right now. So what I
Okay,
wanted to
I
show
got it.
you is in the top right corner, there's a like a user with a plus. You can invite me into that room, and the gray button
Oh,
next to
okay,
leave. Yeah.
okay,
So now I get a invitation. Megazord demo account is inviting you to Bits today.
okay,
I join. I'm going to mute my microphone here in a second. And so now we're both in this room. And again, it's designed to feel like Clubhouse, at least from a social interaction perspective.
okay.
But now instead, so I have a drop down. So if you click that drop down, you can see the different functions there. And if you click on my image, you can see my full Bitclout profile.
Okay. So I'll click on your image. Okay, good. I like that. I draw shapes on a screen. That's pretty much the essence
That's
of UX
that's what I
UI
do.
writing.
That's what I do.
Cool.
Well, that's how I describe what I do to my mom. It seems to be the best description that
That's funny.
resonates with her.
That's kind of like when people ask my wife what I do, she says, he just sits around and thinks shit up. Which if you're working in ads,
I mean, that's a full-time
you
job.
should be thinking things up. So, all right. So this is showing this is an API to Bitclout. You're pulling this profile information. So we're not on Bitclout at this stage, but
Exactly.
it's got a button saying visit profile. That would take us to Bitclout, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then in the
So,
drop down, there's a option to buy coin that will take you to bitclout.com, but the specific page that you can purchase my coin. And there's
so could I
the
do that right now? Like if I went to your coin, do you want me to do that?
yeah, give it a go.
All right. Okay, great. Right there, all I gotta do is start doing the transaction.
Yep.
1%
That's
founders
not.
reward, folks. So get in while you can.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, I did that last week. I don't plan on changing it anytime soon because I'm not necessarily concerned with it.
Yeah.
Actually, I like Dharmesh just as a person, not like as a Bitclout account. And I think I was trying to be witty about trying to get more of his attention on the platform. So I was like, when I grow up, I want to be like Dharmesh, and
Uh,
his founder reward is 1%. So I was like, I'm gonna make mine 1% too.
that's funny. All right. So, so this isn't. I thought differently about this. This isn't a node. Is there a possibility of it someday being a node?
Absolutely, because I think that's where I think once the platform becomes more mature, not necessarily just in its technology, but just in the way that we use it and the way we feel comfortable with it, then building my own node opens up the possibilities of more avatar-like interactions where people are walking around, their coin price is available, and the actual exchanges. So if you want to Okay, hang on. Let me take a step back and talk about why nodes are really important. So I can't transact anything right now. So if we're in a room, so imagine you're in Clubhouse and somebody
Mhm.
says something great, you tap and you mute and unmute your microphone to clap. But what if you can send someone a diamond when someone says something really great?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we don't necessarily need to build a node for that to happen, but it allows, I think, a lot of efficiencies in that regard. But then it also creates more opportunities where the Bitclout protocol, the blockchain itself, can be used outside of just this Twitter-like use case right now. So
Sure.
bitclout.com is where everyone's spending most of their time because we're all comfortable and familiar with how Twitter works. And so when we post data in the form of a post, using links to images, text, etc., that's all being documented and recorded on the Bitclout blockchain. But what other transactions can we record and document in the context of a metaverse where there's the possibility that someone doesn't have to go to this Twitter use case in order to use Chime In as a metaverse in order to like it creates the opportunity for a new social media one that
Mhm.
isn't in a feed or in like you're not just scrolling a vertical feed, and that you're actually moving around a uh, a virtual or digital space and interacting that way, and data is being transacted and stored in that regard. So like whether it's chats or whether it's purchases through NFTs, if you're customizing an avatar, or if you are buying someone's coin that you encounter in the Chime In pub, like building an independent node will enable those possibilities instead of having to make all those actions drive
Yeah,
you back to bitclout.com.
right. Like I could see an auction house here.
Yeah.
Like,
So you don't actually have to like confirm that transaction on bitclout.com or in the Twitter like
yeah,
interface.
yeah.
You can do
You
it.
could literally have art shows and auctions, and people can
Exactly.
just buy and sell right there,
Exactly.
or a bazaar. You know, where you've got a street here that's a bazaar where people have their things for sale, and you could say the bazaar's open for it's a farmer's market, from Saturday morning from 8 a.m. to noon. We're all out there trying to sell our wares and meeting each other. I don't know. I'm sure there's a million cool things you can do with it.
Yeah,
You're
it
just
gets exciting when you try to imagine the possibilities. My core driving principle is because the more I'm learning about metaverses, the more I'm starting to feel like what exists now is just really freaking corny. Like it's very video game like, and there's definitely a component of that you can't escape. Because like first person paradigms for navigating in a virtual space, it's always going to feel like a video game. But the core driving principle for me is all these scenarios that you're describing, I want to make them feel as intuitive as possible, and it
right.
has the least amount of corniness that
Yeah,
that we can arrive at. And so that's why I really like the Clubhouse interface in the context of this. For now, right? This is
right.
still
Sure.
like a lot of people are saying that this is one of the most, one of the furthest along projects on BitClout because it looks polished, right? But
Yeah,
that's my expertise, like
sure.
front end UI UX. But in the grand scheme of things, this is still 1% towards what the full possibilities might be. So this is still very MVP to me.
And how do I so that what we looked at before we went into the Bits Today room was that little city that's
Yeah,
growing. What
yeah.
about when it's the size of Chicago or New York City?
Wouldn't
How
that
do
be
you
great?
fly around in it? Yeah, it'll happen. But how do you navigate that? Will you have zones and districts, and
That's the
that's where I see like buying and selling NFT real estate becoming very popular. Like you want to be closest to the city center, right?
exactly. Yeah, and that's the fun part is I need to figure out novel ways to do that that isn't just ripping off like Decentraland or
Why not?
crypto
Why not
voxels.
rip them off? I mean, everybody does it. Everybody's selling real
I
estate in that.
I know, but I hate them from an interaction design perspective because, like I
Right,
mentioned
right.
earlier, they're disorienting, they're nauseating, they're dizzying. Like
Mhm.
I don't want to like if a metaverse fully self actualizes and it becomes a part of our everyday life, just imagine yourself. Like it's gonna force us all to be like hardcore gamers, where we have to, be
Yeah,
comfortable with our keyboards and like looking around and moving around. There's like walking and looking and moving. Those are new controls that we have to learn. I think there's so
yeah,
many things about how we interact with screens right now where we can just use the paradigms that we're comfortable with, like trackpads, pointing and clicking and moving through space that way. And that's what I don't want to rip off. Like I don't want to use the old, video game paradigm. And I don't know what it is, right? I'm talking very much in abstractions right now. I'm just very confident there's a better way to do it. And
sure.
that's what's exciting to me.
Well, you can bet Facebook's working on it, with the Oculus, and, all of this sort of, extended reality type stuff has been kinda boring to me for a
Yeah.
while,
Yeah, me too. Do you have
because
an Oculus?
I don't, but I'd like to get one more so now because Facebook, even though I hate Facebook. I don't use it on a personal level. I can't stand it. We obviously, as
Yeah.
an ad agency, have to spend a lot of money with them,
Yeah.
but I'm well aware of their abilities with, data, extraction and use. But for a company of its magnitude to say we're pivoting completely to metaverse, you can't ignore that. And I think
No, you can't.
I try to have these discussions with my kids who are, middle school, high school now, and just sort of paint a picture of, for instance, I'll try to paint the picture.
Bill, did I lose you?
You
Bill,
there?
can you hear me?
Yeah, now I hear you.
Yeah,
Everything
you
went
cut
blank.
out.
I think I've got two internets. I think they switched all of a sudden for some reason. Um, anyway, what I was saying was I try to help my kids understand that, let's say 12 years ago, maybe less. In fact, I would say probably 10ish. Like, look, I didn't have a smartphone until like 10 years ago. We were perfectly fine. We were happy. We did other things. You know, 10 years or so before that, I probably didn't even have a cell phone. Maybe it was 12 years before that. So there's a lot of my life I lived without computers, email, cell phones, all of that. They can't comprehend it, even though
Yeah.
some of that lack of technology existed in their lifetimes. And I try to, fast forward for them and say, you're going to have discussions with your kids and telling them, wow, when we wanted to talk to each other, we had to have this thing that we carried around called a smartphone. Like when I wanted to contact my friend, I had to actually type into a phone. And when I wanted to navigate on my computer, I had to actually like move a little toggle switch and all these things because their kids won't even comprehend it. They'll just speak it or think it and it'll happen. So anyway, I just feel like that we're not going to be thinking, 10 years, we're going to look back at this conversation and say, wow, I can't believe we even had to consider that you would have to navigate a 3D world rather than just
Yeah,
instinctively navigating it.
that's such a really good point, and I want to make a prediction. Okay,
Okay.
I think it's so if you think about like cell phones and what it was like in the 90s with that giant brick that you like held up to your face with, sometimes you needed both hands, and now we can put it in our pocket. I
Yeah.
don't know if that path to this new way of communicating is going to be as linear as that was, where it's just the device shrinking, but the paradigm stays
Hmm.
the same. Because
Right.
I bought my first Oculus during the pandemic because I was using it for, there's so many interesting use cases. Like I was using it
Hmm.
for sketching and drawing. I was using it
Hmm.
for socializing. I was using it for working out.
Hmm.
It was pretty cool, but it got old really quick. But the other thing too is when I was in virtual spaces hanging out with like my cousins or my friends that also had Oculuses, there's like a poker game that you can all sit at a table at and, play poker at what feels like a physical table next
Right.
to your friends. It was the same thing. It was like disorienting. There was like a few
Yeah.
moments where I felt like I was going to get like motion sickness. And I really think that technology is going to improve, but navigating virtual spaces also with a headset, I don't know if that's the right answer. I mean, if the technology improves and feels more comfortable and we can see in our peripheral like what's behind the headset,
Mm.
maybe that might help. But I'm so confident there's a better way
Yeah, I
than
agree.
just like than and so that's what I mean. I think that's the direction that Facebook's moving in, where they're saying virtual places to convene are very popular. There's lots of use cases and lots of value there, and we have the technology to build that in the context of VR. So it's a no-brainer for them. I don't know if the VR metaverse is going to win out though.
I can't even guess. I can't venture a guess. But I've been saying for 20 years now that like this was at the advent of cell phone, sort of adoption on a global level. I remember telling friends, I was like, look, someday we're going to be like thinking, boy, remember when we had to have that device? Because a cell phone's just transmitting energy. and it's
Yeah.
there's devices transmitting it, transmit and receiving and re-encrypting it or whatever, decrypting it for us to consume. And I believe our brains or devices mixed with our brains will do it automatically. Like if I want to talk to
Oh
you,
yeah, that's crazy.
I'll just say,
Also very
"Hey,
plausible.
hey, Yazin," and I just there's it's like when we say, "Hey Siri," but it's literally sort of uh,
She
a
listened.
cyborg type thing. I don't know, but I believe it's all just sending and receiving energy. We have to use devices and radio waves for that now. But I
Yeah.
believe over time it could be 100 years, 1,000 years. Our brains and our physiology will adapt. I don't know. It's just we are such at this stage in time. It's remarkable what humans have done. It's completely wild. But when you
Yeah.
accelerate that curve and AI, which scares the shit out of me,
Me too.
but all of that's going to be like and our kids, like I'm thinking about what you're talking about, how difficult it is for you and me navigating 3D space. My kids play Minecraft, Roblox. It's like completely natural to them. They don't even consider it.
Well, let
And
me let me just also, with full transparency here, like I became addicted to video games over the pandemic. That was like my everyone has a pandemic hobby.
yeah, yeah.
Video games was mine. So I am native to video game culture. I'm native to video game
Hmm.
what's the word I'm looking for? Mechanics,
Yeah,
okay? But when there's a controller in your hand and you spend all day playing, it becomes second nature.
yeah,
Like the buttons that you press, the way that you move the joysticks. But that learning curve is really high for somebody who's never played video games before. And
yeah,
if a metaverse is gonna, I mean, this could be like generations turnover in the same way, people were now like typing on a keyboard is second nature. Maybe the same way we navigate in video games is going to become as familiar. Um, and so that's like that could be generations from now, but in the near term we have to use the paradigms that we're comfortable with, the
yeah,
mental models that we're used to. And
yeah,
also let me just reiterate, okay, like the notion and just thinking deeply about metaverses, where all this is going and where this project fits in. I'm This is still very new for me too, so I'm not positioning myself as the metaverse expert. I just saw a need for the Bitclout community to have a place to convene that was centralized and that integrated Bitclout functionality. And it just so happened that like I've now found myself in a position where I'm curious about all this stuff and trying to figure out like how I
yeah,
can leverage these patterns.
yeah. Zuckerberg was just trying to create something for college kids to meet.
Yeah, but Zuckerberg talks all the time about that book Snow Crash. So there's like VR Bibles that these like
But did he
big.
really see it when he was trying to launch Facebook?
No, that's Snow Crash was why he launched Oculus. I
No,
think I
but that's
heard
my
it.
point. That's my point I'm trying to make to you is that he didn't
Oh,
need to know everything when he launched it. Like you don't need to know everything.
oh man, I appreciate that reassurance. It makes
So
me feel a lot better.
you're in a great position, I think. And I like that you're I don't know that I would have considered it the way you have. I would have wanted to go full on 3D metaverse. And I think you're doing the right thing now that you've shown me. Like let's work with the paradigms we currently live in so we can inhabit those and then build out. I think that's pretty cool.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I think, um, like I said, there's still a lot more to think about and to think about more deeply in how I can evolve this project. And that could very well be the direction. That's just my current disposition.
Yeah.
Is I'm fighting as hard as I can to avoid going down that path.
So, all right. So let's wrap it up here with a
Okay.
simple question that's probably maybe the hardest for you.
Okay.
Um, there's a project called JamClout. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And I
It's
don't,
come up a lot. I haven't
yeah,
used it.
and I haven't used it either, but I at least understand it in that it's simply, um, I guess I would say it is a clubhouse for Bitclout. and that's really so a clubhouse for Bitclout. What is Chime In?
Okay, I want to eventually go back to the comparisons to Jamclout and really just the category of audio spaces for Bitclout, because I think that's something I want to touch on a little bit. But what is Chime In? Chime In is a virtual public square. That's
There it is.
the phrase that I've been using.
Okay.
And the metaverse is just what I'm describing as the digital spatial interface. It's still point and click. There's no way to move through inside the buildings, but it was the best way to describe the interface in a way that was distinct. So it's close to a metaverse, but I think from the feedback that I've gotten is that it's not meeting people's expectations of what a full metaverse is, and that's okay, because the goal is this is just a virtual public square for everyone on Bitclout to convene.
But doesn't a public square connote one big space where everybody can go speak? Whereas your real estate that you show graphically is like buildings, like offices,
Mm-hmm.
unique places that people can go.
Is that in reference to like a public square is one open space versus these are just closed off rooms?
Yeah.
Well, so that was the intention behind the town square, the one place that wasn't going to change, be customized, or be renamed.
Okay.
That was intended to be the main default gathering place.
So, all right then.
Because if as soon as you log in, people can start hearing you, I think that's a bit uncomfortable. You know, you want to create space for people to be logged in, to see where everyone's at, what everyone's talking about, but not necessarily engaged in conversation if you don't want to be.
Okay. All right. So that's partly something I missed because I didn't go there first. I didn't click on that first.
To town hall.
Right. So ostensibly I could go here. Who would be the moderator in the clubhouse sort of designation?
That was another thing that I was being intentional about, is there's no moderator or moderator controls.
So it could just be a lot of noise.
It could be, but then, you know, everyone can see your coin price. Your reputation's on the line.
And then I can go to Echo Node, which is in there now, and say, hey, let's go over here and talk.
That's right. Or you can go into another space and then just send them an invite and they'll get notified.
Got it. Yeah. I just clicked on it and somebody started talking to me. A little freaked me out. So
Oh, really?
yeah. Not that it's freaky, it's just I wasn't expecting it while you were talking to me. But
well, hopefully, you know, in the near term, that happens in every room where there's, you know, just a lot of activity and a lot of meaningful connections that happen there.
Yeah.
In each room, and not just town hall.
So if you can do this in a way where audio is really sounds great, man, you'd own the space.
I'm told it's
I know it's not easy,
or it's as good as Clubhouse.
Yeah, well, that millisecond I just heard somebody talking, I was like, well, that's a great sounding, audio. But I mean, because Clubhouse Clubhouse can be just awful. Like I can't listen sometimes to some people's audio.
Yeah, Clubhouse gives you the ability to control the fidelity of your audio, so you can like do lower bandwidth stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing that automatically.
Yeah, I like that. And there's another one. I want to say, which is the platform? Oh man, Discord. Is it Discord? No, Telegram. I know which one is it? I think it's Telegram does this, where you go to a chat and you can control people's volume, like what their volume is in your feed.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'll have to look into that.
I love that.
It's really cool.
Sometimes people are just overbearing. I'm like, if I could just turn you down a little bit so I could hear everybody else. So anyway, well, man, I've loved this. This has been a great conversation and makes me think about possibilities. So there's going to be some cool stuff. I'm glad we, sometimes I get a nudge from somebody, hey, you should talk to so-and-so, and I tend to ignore it, but I'm glad I didn't ignore this one. So it's been fun.
I really appreciate that. That really means a lot, Bill. And yeah, I'm glad we met, And this conversation was a pleasure. Thanks for
Well,
having me.
well, let's hope our listeners think that too. So,
Fingers
right
crossed.
on. All right. Thanks a lot.